What's up everybody? I hope you're excited because this week we're doing a little something different. You may already know that Wyrd has been working with content creators to preview some of the stuff that's going to be coming in the new book later this year. Well, this channel was lucky enough to get a hold of one of these previews, and in this video we're going to break it all down for you. Now, as a quick note, everything that I'll say in this video is my own speculation and opinion, and does not necessarily represent Wyrd's official opinion. They just sent over the images and told me to have at it. Now, before we get into the actual reveals, let's do a little catch up on where some of our favorite characters are at in the story. Come on, you had to know there was going to be some lore in here. Ever since he arrived in Malifaux, Lord Cooper has heard warnings that the Beastmaster Marcus had it out for him. As an avid hunter, Cooper's activities are in direct conflict with Marcus, who is a man of nature and a friend to the animals. When Marcus receives word that Lord Cooper is having a weapon brought in from Earthside, he sabotages the rifle in hopes that it will be the end of the man. When Lord Cooper takes it on a hunt, he tries to fire at a Slate Ridge mauler that is charging him, but the gun malfunctions and the mauler is able to attack. Lord Cooper is badly disfigured and spends a long time in bed while engineers and doctors try to find a way to reconstruct his destroyed limbs. After the successful augmentations are made, Lord Cooper decides that he wants revenge, and that the best way to get to Marcus will be to capture or kill his mate. Lord Cooper leads an expedition into the forest in an attempt to hunt down Miranda, and it may have been successful if it weren't for the presence of a Malifaux Rex that attacks the party, allowing Miranda to get away. So let's take a look at Lord Cooper, Huntmaster. It looks like his experiences hunting down Miranda may have led him to really embracing his woodsman side. Seems like he's put away his big rifle and swapped it out for a bow, and he's even tried to camouflage himself a bit by putting some branches on his back. And these changes are also going to be reflected in his stat card, so let's take a look through it. Lord Cooper, Huntmaster, still 15 stones, defense 6, willpower 5, but he's going to get an extra point of movement up to 6, and of course he's size 2. He's also got one more point of health in the original version, up to 12. As far as his abilities, he's got depths of Malifaux, which makes him immune to severe and hazardous terrain. That's an ability that we've seen in other crews before. Then we've got Lead the Hunt. It only applies if he's your leader, and it gives +1 to the duel for any friendly model that takes an action outside of its activation. Now that's going to be super useful, and especially works well with the next ability, Scent of Blood, which allows a friendly beast model to discard a card and take a melee action anytime you damage a model, and then that melee action takes a negative twist to the damage. So Cooper will be able to shoot something, you discard a card, and then the Malifaux can take a melee attack at +1 stat with a negative to the damage flip. Pretty good combination. He's also got Stealth, which means he can't be targeted outside of 6 inches. This being his only real defensive ability, it should make him a little harder to target for ranged crews. And then finally we have Predatory Instinct. This is an ability that he had before, where once per activation you can take a negative or positive twist to a duel, and then you have to take the opposite twist to the damage flip. This is really useful for getting around things like concealment or friendly fire. I love how thematic all these abilities are, and they really tie into his new status as a Huntmaster. So now let's look at the back of the card. Skinning Knife is a pretty basic melee attack with some solid stats. Range 1, stat 6, 2, 3, 4 damage, and it's got a trigger that can push the target 3 inches towards a pit trap. We'll come back to the pit trap thing in a minute. Then Hunter's Bow. This is the ability that replaces his rifle shot. Range 12, 6 of mask stat, 2, 4, 5 damage, and it can give out the Adversary Beast condition. Now again, thinking back to his abilities, this is going to work really well in that combo that I talked about with the Malifaux Rex, because if the target takes Adversary Beast, then the Rex is going to get a positive twist to his melee attack that's already +1 stat. Then we have a trigger to heal a model within 3, a trigger to give injured, and a built-in trigger where when you kill an enemy, you drop a scheme marker in base contact. It's nice to see that he has some abilities that'll help you with schemes, instead of just being about killing. As far as tactical actions, we have Call of the Wild, which you may recognize from Marcus's crew. Stat 6 of Rams, target number 12, and you can target a beast and make them move up to their move stat. But the built-in trigger lets you make them charge instead. Again, tying into the Lead the Hunt ability, that model's going to get +1 to the stat if they successfully charge and take a melee attack. And then finally, we have a bonus action, Create Trap. You gotta flip a 4, and it'll generate a pit trap marker, which is hazardous, damage 1, injured 1, within 2 inches. It has a really interesting trigger, Smokescreen, which makes enemy models take a negative twist to the first flip they make while within an inch of the new marker. And then the other trigger lets you drop the pit trap marker a little further away. Overall, it seems like Lord Cooper's going to have some very cool abilities, and he's going to be able to set up some really great combos. And I really love how all the abilities really tie in well, thematically, with the new version of Cooper. Now you may be thinking, Cooper's new version is pretty cool, but it ties in a lot with beasts, and he doesn't really have too many beasts in his keyword. Well, let's take a look at the next reveal, the Empyrean Eagle. I really love this piece of art. We have this really cool looking bird of prey with 2 heads and glowing purple eyes. It's very creepy looking. And then you'll also notice that he has little bangles on his feet. I don't know if those are armor or some sort of control mechanism, but either way, this art's really cool. So let's take a look at his card. He costs 5 soul stones. He's a minion that you can have 2 of, with keyword Beast, Apex, and Chimera. So you can hire him with Lord Cooper or Marcus, and he's going to tie in with all of their abilities that reference beasts. Defense 5, willpower 4, not super impressive, but moves 7. So he's really fast, and you'll notice that he does not have insignificant, which means this guy's going to be a great scheme runner. He's also size 2 and has 5 health. His first ability is Adaptive Evolution. This ties in with his Marcus keyword, It lets you discard a mutation upgrade to receive a positive twist in any suit of your choosing to your next duel. They also have Flight, which is going to make it even easier to move around the table and run some schemes. Predatory Instinct, that's the one from Lord Cooper's crew. That lets you take a positive or negative twist to a duel, and then apply the opposite twist to the damage flip. And lastly, we have Scout Ahead. After deployment zones are chosen, choose an enemy non-leader model without From the Shadows, and your opponent has to deploy that model now. This is a really cool ability, because you can make your opponent really telegraph what their plan is going to be, either making them deploy their key scheme runner, or maybe the big beater model that you want to be able to stay away from. And on the back of the card, we have Talons, range 0, stat 5, 1/2/3 damage flip, so not a super powerful melee attack. And it's got the trigger Rake the Eyes, where you choose a suit, and then look at the top 3 cards of your opponent's deck, and discard any of that suit, and then put the rest back in the order you choose. It can be pretty useful if your opponent relies on a particular suit, or if you just want to know what their next few flips are going to be. And finally, we have a bonus action, Aerial Strike, sort of reminiscent of the Austringers. This has 12-inch range with a stat of 4, and it ignores cover, concealment, and line of sight. It's got a 1/3/5 damage track, and a trigger that lets you drop a scheme marker somewhere between you and the target. This is pretty cool because if you're using your Eagle to run schemes, he can still harass the enemy from 12 inches away, and since it's a bonus action, it's not going to stop you from doing what you need to do. Plus, he might be able to drop some extra scheme markers on the way. Overall, I think this model is going to be a great scheme runner, and I think it fits in really well with Marcus and Cooper's crew. Marcus was once a teacher who left that role in order to take a more direct approach, studying plants and animals while living among them. When Lord Cooper arrived in Malifaux, he started encroaching on Marcus's territory, eating his food and hunting his animals. Marcus hatched his plot to get rid of Lord Cooper, and then went about continuing his studies. He trekked deeper into the forest, pursuing more knowledge about grafting and changing animals, until he himself was encroaching on Titania's domain. After avoiding each other for a long time, Titania summons Marcus before her, and the tension is palpable. The two clash, and Marcus almost gets the better of the Autumn Queen, until one of her guards steps in and distracts Marcus long enough for her to get the upper hand. Each having gained the respect of the other, Marcus asks Titania for access to greater knowledge about chimerancy. She grants it to him, and they both agree to stay out of each other's way. After Lord Cooper recovers and goes on a hunt for Miranda, the woman returns to Marcus's domain, battered and bruised from the ordeal. Marcus helps tend to her wounds as his anger builds. So now let's take a look at Marcus Alpha. Ooh, it looks like Marcus is not very happy that someone was messing with his girl. This kind of reminds me a little bit of Marcus's avatar back in 1st edition. A little more bestial, a little more aggressive than his normal form. I love how you can see the remnants of his clothes, like he just transformed. And those glowing purple eyes are really cool. Maybe that's a hint that he's using some of the newfound power that he got from Titania. But I really love this art, and I can't wait to see what the model's going to look like. But let's take a look at his card. So the first difference you're going to want to notice here is that he gained the keyword Beast. And that's significant because there's a couple of abilities within his crew that only work on other Beast models. In particular, you can give out Adversary Beast, which OG Marcus wouldn't be able to benefit from, but Marcus Alpha will. So we have the same 15 stone cost, defense 6, willpower 6, but new Marcus actually lost a point of movement down to 5, and still size 2. Still 12 health, and one thing that's going to be significant on this is that he's now on a 40mm base, as opposed to the old 30mm base. That's interesting because it's going to make him a little harder to proxy, but it also means that he's going to have an easier time holding down other models in melee. So let's check out his abilities. Adaptive Evolution. This is the Chimera keyword ability that lets you take one of the attached mutation upgrades and discard it to receive a positive in any suit to your next duel. And the next one is Aspect of the Beast, which lets you start the game with one of those upgrades. Favorable Terrain means he's unaffected by severe terrain, which is a common theme for his crew, but it also means that while he's in severe terrain, or within an inch of impassable terrain, he has cover. And it also ties in with Wilds of Malifaux, which says that he creates a 4-inch aura that's treated as severe terrain, and no enemy models can be placed within it. Now, if I'm understanding that correctly, he's always within severe terrain, which means he's always going to benefit from cover because of the favorable terrain ability. If I'm understanding that wrong, somebody drop a comment and let me know. But now back to the last one that we skipped, Pack Leader. This one says that once a Beast or Chimera model discards a mutation upgrade, it can attach that upgrade to a Beast or Chimera model within 4. Now you can only do that once per activation, and every model can only pick up an upgrade from this once per turn. Now you might notice if you've peeked at the back of the card by now, that Marcus no longer has the ability to just give out those upgrades, like he could with his Chimerancy ability in the original version. But with the ability to pass the upgrades between different models, it means that you'll be able to be much more aggressive in deciding when to discard the upgrades to get those positive twists and to get those suits, because you don't have to worry about losing the upgrade altogether. You're just going to pass it off to one of your friends. So you might not be able to get the upgrades out there as easily, but once they're out there, they're going to stick around and bounce around between your models a lot more. I think that's really going to encourage a much more aggressive playstyle. So let's take a look at the back of the card. Furious Claws is his new melee attack, got a 1-inch range and a stat 6, 246 damage track, and it pushes the target 2 inches in any direction. That's definitely going to be useful for pulling your opponent's models back and feeding them to some of your other crew members. We have a trigger Chimera Strike. This is one that we've seen before in this this crew, it basically boosts the damage based on the number of Chimera upgrades on models within 2 to a maximum of 2. So if you set this up right, his damage track is effectively 4, 6, 8. That's pretty dangerous. Then we have a Mutilate trigger to give out slow, or +1 damage if they're already slow, and Trail of Blood to give out Adversary Beast, which again, Marcus can now benefit from. Next up, we've got Intimidating Roar, 7 against Willpower at an 8-inch range, to push the target 6 inches away, and give it slow if it's a minion. That'll be a good way to push a key scheme runner out of place, or remove your opponent's beater, who's tying down the rest of your crew. For tactical actions, we have Law of Meat, you gotta flip a 4, and then all friendly beasts within 4 inches are healed too. Now you'll notice that's a pulse, which means it doesn't affect Marcus, but this looks like a great way to heal up your crew if they all have a little bit of chip damage on them. Then we've got a trigger Endless Hunt, that allows you or one of the friendly models affected by the pulse to take a melee attack. That's a great way to save some AP when you need to do some damage, but you also need to heal your buddies. And then we've got Fear of Pursuit, enemy models within range have to take a target number 12 willpower duel or gain Adversary Beast. Next up, we've got a bonus action, Aspects of the Wild, no duel required, you just discard a mutation upgrade and then attach a new one. But you'll notice that says if able, which means Marcus is going to start the game with an upgrade. He can charge in, discard the upgrade to get a good trigger off in the attack, pass the upgrade to somebody else, and then bonus action to attach a new upgrade, setting you up to do the same thing next turn. And it's exactly that kind of combination that's going to mean that you can put out just as many upgrades as we used to be able to, but they're going to do a lot more work for you as you use them and then bounce them around to different allies. And finally, because Marcus's crew didn't have enough leaps in it, we have Elite. It only needs a 3, but it does require a mask, and it's a standard 6-inch leap. But it also has a sudden strike trigger to take a melee attack. That means it's going to cost you a lot to do, but if you have the ram or the mask in your hand, you can discard an upgrade for the other suit, and then get the leap off with a guaranteed melee follow-up. Once most of your upgrades are out, and you're not using the other bonus action as much, this can be a great way to really surprise one of your opponents, jumping across the board and then rushing down a target. So as you can see, this is a much more aggressive and front-line version of Marcus, whereas his old version, he played more like a support master, sort of staying in the back and controlling things. And I really love it thematically. It really shows a more feral side of Marcus, as opposed to the more stately college professor version of it that we've seen in the past. I especially love this new mechanic where we're bouncing the upgrades around between different models, and I love the idea of these mutations randomly popping up in different models, and then disappearing and popping up somewhere else. And I really can't wait to see Marcus and Cooper go up against each other, both in the game and in the lore. So that's it for the reveal. Drop a comment below and let me know what you think of these new characters. I'm definitely excited for some of the changes coming to the game, and I can't wait to try out some of these new masters. If you're new here, I do a series called the Malifaux Lore Guide, where we pick one master and go through a quick recap of all of their lore. It's a great way to get up to speed on your favorite character's backstory, or remind you of some of your favorite stories that you may not have read in a decade or so. If you want to check out the episode on Marcus to learn a little bit more about him, I'll link that up in the card so you can check it out. I want to thank Wyrd for giving me the opportunity to do this. It's really cool to see how much they're supporting the community, as well as content creators. So I hope they keep that up. Everybody keep an eye out on the Rage Quit Wire podcast. They're next up for the content reveals, so make sure you check them out, and definitely check out all of the other Malifaux content creators. There's a lot of people out there doing some really cool stuff, so make sure you support them if you want to see more of it. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel to support me, and thanks for watching.